He's going to lose. He was always going to lose. And now he's even more clearly going to lose because he's essentially admitted that he made false and defamatory statements about them. The language in the document that was filed by his lawyers that he reserves the right to challenge the constitutionality of the matter. I bet you have a hard time finding a First Amendment lawyer who has the vaguest idea what he's talking about. He's sort of cooked in this case.
Cooked indeed. Former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani is now staring down a massive financial penalty after losing a federal defamation case filed against him by 2 Fulton County, Georgia election workers. And we'll get to the judge's decision and what spurred it in just a moment. But first, I think it's worth getting a little bit of a refresher on this case and what exactly Giuliani has been found guilty of. Now, the lawsuit was brought forth by Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shaye Moss, who say they've suffered reputational damage and emotional harm after Giuliani specifically singled them out and made false claims that the mother-daughter duo engaged in ballot tampering after the 2020 presidential election. Giuliani's statements about them included calling them ballot-stuffing criminal conspirators. Giuliani also drew attention to a video of them after the election, which was first posted by the Trump campaign and showed part of a security tape of ballot counting in Atlanta. On social media, his podcast and other broadcasts, Giuliani said the video showed suitcases filled with ballots when it did not capture anything but normal ballot processing. And that's according to the defamation lawsuit and a state investigation. These were just some of the many lies we heard from Giuliani and Donald Trump after he lost his re-election bid. Both women testified before the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riots. In fact, here's Ruby Freeman discussing what she had to endure following Giuliani's unfounded claims of ballot tampering.
I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shaye.
18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler.
Their places of work, their homes should have been searched for evidence of ballots, for evidence of USB ports, for evidence of voter fraud.
Do you know how it feels to have the president of the United States to target you? The president of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one, but he targeted me, Lady Ruby, a small business owner, a mother, a proud American citizen who stand up to help Fulton County run an election in the middle of the pandemic.
Just absolutely disgusting. Everything you heard from Giuliani and Donald Trump in the video we just showed you, complete and utter lies. And Ruby Freeman is absolutely correct in noting the type of terror someone in the country would face as a result of the literal president of the United States targeting her, okay? Basically directing all sorts of unhinged people to harass and threaten her and her daughter. By the way, the suit also alleges that during Giuliani's disinformation campaign, the FBI recommended that Freeman leave her home for her own safety. Freeman's daughter, Shaye Moss, expressed that she was afraid for her safety due to Giuliani's lies, which, by the way, isn't really that difficult to believe when you consider the rage demonstrated by rioters on January 6th as they tore through the Capitol building.
My life upside down. I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all. I felt like it was all my fault. Like if I would have never decided to be an elections worker. Like, I could have done anything else, but that's what I decided to do. And now people are lying and spreading rumors and lies and attacking my mom. I'm her only child. And I felt horrible for picking this job and being the one that always wants to help and always there, never missing not one election. I just felt like it was my fault for putting my family in this situation.
That's absolutely awful, and she obviously should not feel that way. The fact that she wanted to spend her time and energy in being an election worker in a country that is supposed to value our democratic process does not make her a bad person. It makes her someone who actually believes in that democratic process, unlike Giuliani and unlike Donald Trump. Now, Paper Dragon in our Twitch community argues that Giuliani is guilty of leaking hair dye, which is true. And if that were the case, I'd say let him go. But there's obviously more involved in Giuliani's behavior here, and it had a massive impact on these women's lives. Just last month, Giuliani confessed that he made false statements about the women. He had confessed it, he admitted it, but that the defamation case against him is supposedly unconstitutional. So the court filing read that, quote, defendant Giuliani, for the purposes of litigation only, does not contest that to the extent the statements were statements of fact and otherwise actionable, such actionable factual statements were false. Giuliani wrote in a signed stipulation that he said was intended to avoid unnecessary expenses in litigating what he believes to be unnecessary disputes. Well, we all know that Giuliani's broke, and this attempt to essentially do away with the case was pretty hilarious and actually ended up biting him in the ass later. Here's more on Giuliani's confession and the legal maneuvering he was hoping to accomplish by filing it.
He's conceding that, yes, he did make these false statements about these women after the 2020 election. He's also saying that he acknowledges that those statements can be defamatory, that they were defamatory, but he's trying to avoid his own accountability here by saying in this court filing late last night that his statements mean that he shouldn't necessarily have to pay damages to them because his statements alone might not be what was hurting these women. And also, he's trying to say that what he was saying after the 2020 election is still protected speech, First Amendment constitutionally protected speech.
Well, look, the Constitution does in fact protect most speech, but there are limitations to the First Amendment, as there are with other constitutional rights. While one can even engage in things like hate speech without fear of government retaliation, there are exceptions, including inciting violence or defamation of character. So Giuliani's filing did nothing to persuade the judge that his lies about specific election workers were protected speech. But aside from that, US District Judge Beryl Howell determined that Giuliani lost because he struggled to maintain access to his electronic records and did not adequately respond to subpoenas from attorneys for Freeman and Moss as the case moved forward. The bottom line is that Giuliani has refused to comply with his discovery obligations and thwarted plaintiffs Rudy Freeman and Shay Moss's procedural rights to obtain any meaningful discovery in this case. The judge continued to argue that just as taking shortcuts to win an election carries risks, even potential criminal liability, bypassing the discovery process carries serious sanctions, no matter what reservations a non-compliant party may try to artificially preserve for appeal. And there's some speculation that Giuliani likely didn't have the resources to properly cooperate in the discovery process. In fact, the lack of resources led to him trying to engage in that ridiculous maneuvering that essentially led to him confessing that he had defamed these women. But look, failing to cooperate proved to be pretty pricey for the former New York City mayor. Giuliani has already been sanctioned almost $90,000 for Freeman and Moss's attorney's fees in the case. And Howell says that he could be saddled with even more fines. Judge Howell says a trial to determine the amount of damages for which Giuliani will be held liable will be set later this year or possibly early 2024. The election workers are asking for unspecified damages, which could amount to millions of dollars. So if you're concerned about your resources, maybe don't engage in defaming people's character. Don't engage in trying to destroy their lives because you didn't like the results of our democratic process. And while this is a civil suit that leads to Giuliani having to pay damages to the individuals that he defamed, keep in mind he's also facing other criminal charges in regard to his attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and I hope Giuliani is realizing that, at least in the moments when he's sober.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.